Hello, listeners, and welcome to another edition of Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, SK, delighted to bring you yet another discussion rich with insights. Today, our focus centers on the complexities of protecting digital assets and understanding cybersecurity readiness in an increasingly connected world. Joining us today is Amol Joshi, a seasoned security executive with CrucialLogics. With a background enriched by over 19 years in IT transformation and cybersecurity programs, Amol brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise, especially in the realm of enhancing IT infrastructure within the biotech and medical industries. His strategic approach has fortified the cybersecurity measures of numerous organizations, making him a pivotal figure in the domain of digital security. Amol will share his insights on how small businesses can navigate the challenging waters of cybersecurity. Good afternoon, Amol. Welcome to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for accepting our invite to be a podcast guest. Let's dive right into your expertise and learn how small businesses can better protect themselves. But before that, I would like to ask you one question. Can you share how you got into the entrepreneurship and how you started your business?
Yeah, for sure. Just to give you a little bit of background, I've been in cybersecurity pretty much all my life. When I got my first cybersecurity designation in 2007, it's a designation called CISSP. There was only about 80,000 people in the world with that designation. I think now there's about 500,000 or more. But at that
Only
point,
80,000.
only
Which
80,000.
year was that?
This is 2007.
2007. Okay.
2007. So CISSP is one of those coveted designations where, the exams are fairly stringent and difficult. And if you're a cybersecurity professional, now there are multiple ones, but back then it used to be CISSP, CISM, CISA. CISSP was more geared towards technical people. And I used to be technical back then. I'm no longer as technical as I used to be. But the CISSP designation, when I got that, and there was only 80,000 in the world, you can imagine that back then the awareness for cybersecurity wasn't as high. I like to call it, I started in cybersecurity way before it was considered sexy, and now everybody is in cybersecurity. Everybody talks about it. It's a common topic for a lot of people. So I got into it, and then I had a couple of different jobs. I went to PwC, I went to IBM. I led their North American project portfolio, for IBM Security Services, and then eventually an opportunity came where I got involved in a small project to enhance somebody's exchange environment. That turned into a bigger project, and it wasn't a planned foray into entrepreneurship. I would say it was the right place at the right time. But the one advice that I always give entrepreneurs is that try and set up something in the area of your expertise, so you don't have to go learn something
That's
brand
very
new.
important.
It is super important because cybersecurity was something that was near and dear to me, along with Microsoft technologies, because I had been in Microsoft technologies. So we kind of married those two together. So our whole, I would say claim to fame as CrucialLogics is using native Microsoft technologies to secure businesses. So keeping it simple, not, going after point solutions, not making cybersecurity unachievable, because people tend to think that it's super expensive, but it's not. You can actually have that deployed within your organization with simple measures that we can talk about today.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing your story with our audience. Now let's discuss about the importance of cybersecurity for small businesses. With the digital threats on the rise, understanding cybersecurity's role is more crucial than ever for small businesses' survival. Amol, could you explain why it's essential for small businesses to invest in robust cybersecurity measures?
Well, I think it is very important for small businesses to invest in robust cybersecurity measures, because small businesses do have sensitive data that they need to protect against, right? You look at a dentist office, or you look at your medical professional or a physiotherapist, they are actually dealing with people's health information. Little known to them that information, if it falls in wrong hands, can be detrimental to their business and reputation. Secondly, small businesses also overestimate their cybersecurity posture. They think that having antivirus on their computer is good enough. But it's not about that. It's about having defense in depth.
Right.
It's about educating your employees so that it's not just the bad actor that you're trying to protect against. It's also, mistakenly releasing data by a wrong action by your employee, unbeknownst to them. They click on something, or they share something that they're not supposed to. So it's important for small businesses to invest in cybersecurity because they don't know what they have to lose. There's a lot there for them to lose.
Right. And a lot of small business owners have a misconception that investment in cybersecurity is huge.
Right.
Right.
Correct.
So I think that is one of the reason, like a lot of small business owners, they don't invest the time and money in cybersecurity. So
That's right.
creating awareness around this area is very, very important as well, right?
Absolutely. I mean, there's not only that misconception, there's also a misconception that it will never happen to me. Why is someone gonna come attack me? Or a misconception about not knowing where their sensitive data is. Misconception of not knowing that, hey, they need to educate their employees with proper cybersecurity measures and proper cybersecurity awareness. Also, not knowing the true cost of a breach. Right? The true cost of a breach for a small business is just as detrimental as it is to a large business. In fact, probably more, because they don't have the resources to recover from a breach more effectively. So the loss of reputation, the loss of money, the loss of time, billable time, is super important. And I don't think small businesses have come around to the idea that if something like that happens to them, and it's happening to them more and more, because the larger organizations are putting up their fences, right? And the bad actors, the cyber criminals, are now targeting smaller businesses. And when it does happen, it could be potentially detrimental to their entire business.
Right. According to the recent stats I was going through, more than 60% of these small businesses are vulnerable for cyber threats.
I completely agree.
Right.
I think there is a big lack of awareness in terms of what needs to be done within cybersecurity for small businesses. And I think I blame industry professionals like me, because the industry has made it very complicated for small businesses to achieve a cyber resilience posture. And it shouldn't be the case. Like, cybersecurity can be simple. It can be had with using technologies that you already own. You can achieve that posture. You don't have to go spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to achieve something. It can be tailored towards your business and your budget as well, right? You don't need to invest in hundreds of thousands of dollars to achieve the same thing.
How your organization, Amol, is empowering, trying to empower SMBs when it comes to cybersecurity?
So for my organization, as I mentioned, the number one issue was that the small businesses, their entry to cybersecurity was always perceived to be expensive.
Right.
And to a certain extent, it can be when you are dealing with solutions that are meant for enterprises, right? So, and those solutions are very hard to scale down. So the way we empower our, clients that are considered small businesses is by advising them to use native technologies that they already own, right? A lot of it can be achieved by correctly configuring stuff that you already have. Maybe adding a couple of licenses here and there to give you a little bit more features, but not hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's all about processes, proper configurations, and proper awareness. And that's one of the reasons why we actually came up with a concept called Crucial Config, which is a SaaS solution that relies on pre-configured policies that you can deploy to small businesses, so they don't have to go spend $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to achieve the same thing that the solution can give them.
Okay, definitely we will add the details in the podcast description, so
Absolutely.
whoever is interested, they can get in touch with your
Thank you.
organization. Amol, your explanation sheds light on the critical need for cybersecurity investment to safeguard business integrity and continuity. Reflecting on what Amol shared about the necessity for small businesses to prioritize cybersecurity, it's clear that being proactive is not just beneficial, but essential. I encourage all our listeners to think about their current security measures. Are there any gaps that need immediate attention? Sometimes the first step is acknowledging that we can do better to protect our business's digital assets. Let's use today's discussion as a catalyst for that important review. Now, let's talk about the steps needed towards a robust cybersecurity. Like knowing the right steps can transform a vulnerable setup into a secure stronghold.
Correct.
What are the foundational steps a small business should take to ensure they have a good cybersecurity framework?
Absolutely. I think the foundational step is managing your identity correctly. Okay. Again, there's another misconception in cybersecurity. If you actually ask many cyber professionals, or IT managers of companies or even small businesses, what are you trying to protect with these cybersecurity measures? They will always say data, right? And that's a wrong answer. Data is just something that the bad actors get to, but the step one that they always try and compromise is identity. Right. So an identity for you would be sk at CanadianSME.com, whatever your domain is, right? That's what an identity is. Or for a dental clinic or for a physiotherapist, it's the name at whatever domain.com. If you look at every single breach response that we generally do, so we get calls saying, oh, we got breached. Can you come help us out? When you look at that, you will always notice that the first thing that has fallen is identity. So if you don't protect your identity, you don't have awareness within your organization about how to protect identity, robust, complex, long passwords. It's not even about complexity. It's about entropy of passwords. So a password such as Toronto with all zeros in the middle, which you think is complex, is a lot less robust than a password such as, camera, microphone, chair, and a table, right? Like if that's your password, that's a long enough password. It's an easy enough phrase to, remember, and it has a better entropy than, a complex password. It's harder to crack that than it is to crack Toronto as a password. So now once you have that, the next thing is, once you protect your identity, then you move on to protecting your data. Then you move on to having proper, robust backups, immutable backups. Because the first thing that the bad actors would do is, once they get into your environment, is they'll go and delete your backups because then you can't recover. So having proper, immutable backups, having employee awareness training, having your endpoints not only secured but properly updated. Right? How many small businesses that that make updating Windows their priority? I mean, I guarantee you there are small businesses that are still running on Windows XP, which has been out of support forever, right? Or Windows 7 for that matter, which has been out of support forever. They don't put a priority towards the tools that they are using. They'll get, as a dental office, they'll get the best tool to do the work, but they will never look at their computer system.
Ignore it, right?
They'll ignore it.
Yeah.
They'll never look at their computer system as something that would, that's a tool that's enhancing their business.
Which is very, very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Amol, could you highlight any simple yet effective practices that could significantly enhance a small business's security?
Absolutely. I think, like I mentioned, having awareness about identity. So talking to your employees about making sure that they don't reuse passwords. How many of us actually reuse the same password because it's so complex? We have hundreds and thousands of passwords. So how many of us actually use the same password for Hotmail that you use for your work computer, that you will use for your Fitbit application, that you use for checking into Marriott, and what happens with that is if one of those organization gets compromised, like Marriott is one of the biggest breaches in the history, and you still see that the passwords that were compromised appear on dark web that are being purchased, and then that password matches with your organizational password, the bad actor,
they will get a good chance.
They'll get a good chance coming in. Definitely, creating a robust authentication and identity policy is important. The second thing that is important is having your endpoints properly updated. The third thing that's important is, if you don't have a mechanism to control your employees' cell phones, don't allow them to access your corporate data using their cell phones. Because there's a lot of stuff that happens on the cell phone, right? People click on things, people go on sites that they're not supposed to. There's things that can be downloaded on the cell phone that can make its way into your organization. So definitely, I would say those are the three things that you should you should look at to ensure that you can properly secure your organization.
Thank you, Amal, for sharing these important insights with our audience. These insights are invaluable for any SMEs looking to fortify their defenses against digital threats. Now, let's discuss about the preventive security breaches. How to prevent security breaches. Prevention, as everyone knows, prevention is always better than cure, especially when it comes to data breaches. Can you share some examples of breaches and how businesses should respond to minimize damage?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we get called for data breaches and post breach response all the time. And I'll give you a little anecdote without naming names, right? So we got called. The company had ended up transferring about $175,000 US to a cyber criminal. They couldn't figure out how it happened. And then we got in, or we started looking at logs. We started looking at where the bad actor came from. We found out that on their Microsoft 365 system, what they have done is the bad actor had gained access to it through a dark web compromise, reused passwords and things like that. The bad actor now was monitoring, the cyber criminal was monitoring the emails going back and forth between the accounts payable and the vendor, right? And they were just keeping tabs literally for months, right? They were looking at it and they were waiting for an opportune time when an invoice was sent. And when an invoice was sent, that bad actor then took over that thread. And the way it took over the thread was they slightly changed the vendor's domain email address. So instead of vendor's domain address being, let's just say, Canadian SME, right? The I for Canadian SME was turned into a 1, right? Very difficult for the accounts payable and untrained eye to catch it. If you are not aware and if you're not literally, educating your employees that, hey, this can happen to you, keep an eye on it. Very difficult for someone to catch that. Right. And what happened was that bad actor mimicked the exact email chain, the signature, the writing style, the logo, and then sent out an email to the accounts payable saying, oh, by the way, this invoice worth $175,000 US, we just had a banking change. Can you please send it to this new bank information? And the poor accounts payable person sent that money over. That money obviously didn't make it to the vendor. We traced that email back to Tunisia, actually. And when the company went to RCMP or went to the police is like, look, it's outside our jurisdiction. There's nothing I can do. Right. Go talk to your cyber insurance. Guess how many small businesses have cyber insurances? Very few. Right? Very few. Right. So now the accounts payable person has lost their job. The vendor is going to ask you back for the money. The business owner is now out of $175,000, right? And basically there's a huge cost to a simple, change that they could have made by having their Office 365 configured really, really well. They could have, created proper policies that would block automatic forwarding. They could have had spam filtering that is available within the Microsoft technologies for spoof detection, impersonation detection, right? They could have easily had another policy in place that says when there is a change that happens, fundamental change where the bank account information is being, change, have a second person authorize it or contact the vendor to make sure that it was actually the vendor that's asking for it, right? But really, configuration and hardening that Office 365 tenant would have prevented many, this
right. And at the same time, as you suggested, small business owners should keep their employees updated and trained in this area. This is very, very important.
It is super important.
Yeah. And Amol, what proactive measures do you suggest businesses can take to prevent such situations?
Again, the awareness. We say in cybersecurity that your employee awareness is the final defense that you have. The other preventive measures, like I mentioned, would have been a robust security mechanisms in place. It has to be defense in depth, right? Your emails going back and forth need to be properly monitored. If you are sending, if someone sends you a bank account information that needs to be flagged saying, why was this sent in plain text? Someone should have monitored that, right? Your Office 365 should be hardened enough where the bad actor cannot monitor, because what they generally do is when they log in, they create forwarding rules so that they can monitor the emails going back and forth. Forwarding rules should be turned off, right? Having multi-factor authentication turned on so that they can't just log in, using a password that they found. Like multi-factor authentication is like table stakes at this point, right? However, multi-factor authentication can also be bypassed. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that certain protocols that can bypass multi-factor authentication, like IMAP and POP3, they need to be turned off. But however, the most important thing that we can actually do is create rules where your employees can only log in to your systems from devices that are properly managed and compliant that you know of, and geographies that you allow. Because generally, these bad actors aren't jumping in from Canada; they're jumping in, outside of Canada, right? And when they're jumping in from outside of Canada, you can actually block those connections. When they're jumping in they're not jumping in from the device that you own. So if you know the devices that you own, you can say, okay, I'm only going to allow my users to log in from these devices because I have control over these devices. And then that way you can prevent malicious things from happening because you're controlling the entry point into your environment.
Right. Thanks for sharing those insights, which are very, very important for SMBs, especially small business owners to know.
Yes.
We just heard some critical advice on how to prevent and respond to security breaches. This is a great moment to consider how prepared your business is for such challenges. Think about the last time you reviewed your security protocols. Does it align with the best practices Amol mentioned today? Engaging with these preventive measures can be the difference between a secure business and a vulnerable one. Sharing your strategies or questions on this topic could help build a more informed community here on the podcast. Don't forget to share your comments in the comment section. Thank you for tuning in to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. We are going to take a quick break to catch our breath. Stay with us and we will be right back with more insights and stories from the heart of small businesses.
You dreamt big. You made the leap. You and your "we're not stopping at small" business. Doesn't matter you've never done it before. You unlock those problems. You adapt to change. You learn to evolve. You're pioneers in challenging times, finding your own frontiers. Wherever you e-commerce, UPS is with you. So nothing is going to hold you back.
Nope.
Constant Contact delivers the marketing tools your small business needs to keep up, excel, and grow. Constant Contact, helping the small stand tall.
Welcome back to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. We hope you are as excited as we are to dive back into today's topic. Let's continue our journey into the inspiring world of small businesses, full of innovation and passion. Now let's try to understand the data management. Effective data management is pivotal in maintaining security and compliance.
Correct.
How can businesses better manage the data to ensure it's secure and accessible only to the right people?
Right. The effective data management, actually, again, I'm going to, belliger on the point that I made before. Data management starts with effective identity management, right? If you have proper control on your identity, then you can start managing your data correctly. Once you get your identity in order, where you're making sure that your people are logging in from devices that are known to you, from geographies that are known to you, then you move on to where is your data stored. Okay. In our case, we move people to share their data on SharePoint, or store their data on SharePoint. Now, SharePoint gives you proper retention. It gives you proper, labeling. So you can label your data where something is considered internal, something is considered external. You can have it properly labeled. The third thing is access control. Access control is very important because, your HR person may not need access to your financial data. So make sure that your HR person doesn't have access to your financial. Your accountant may not need access to your customer data, in terms of sales, and where the CRM and things like that. Make sure that they don't have access to that. So access control is also super important. The third thing that's important is have an immutable backup. Immutability is the key. Like, you can have backups, but if you're not asking your backup vendor, is my data immutable? You're only it's half the battle. the reason why immutable backup is important is if they get in and if they decide to delete the data, immutability will prevent them from tampering the data for the period that you've set that immutability to. So that's the most important aspect.
And Amol, are there any tools or technologies you recommend for efficient data management?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we recommend Entra ID, which used to be called Azure Active Directory for your identity management. We recommend SharePoint, and SharePoint has some robust policies for from a data management perspective. You could label the data, you can create retention on the data, you can create rules that will scan the data for sensitive information and automatically create labels to prevent that data from falling in wrong hands. You can actually have encryption of the data at rest within SharePoint. And I also recommend Datto SaaS backup solution, which is not super expensive to have an immutability of your Office 365 environment.
Okay. Amol, thanks for sharing those insights. I believe your insights and experiences you have shared today, businesses can enhance their data management, practices to support both security and operational efficiency. Amol's insights into effective data management highlights the crucial role of having robust system in place. How secure is your data? Are there improvements you could implement to enhance data security and management? Considering the tools and processes you use could reveal opportunities for enhancements. Let's open up a dialogue. Share with us the tools or practices you have found effective in managing and protecting your data. Your experiences could guide fellow listeners in navigating similar decisions. Now let's talk about the future of cybersecurity.
Yes.
Looking ahead, the landscape of cybersecurity continues to evolve rapidly. What emerging trends should small business owners be aware of in the realm of cybersecurity?
Yeah, I would take a step back and say, rather than emerging trends, what is the emerging shift in fundamental that's happening within cybersecurity? Cybersecurity is no longer some hobbyist sitting in the basement trying to hack your environment. It's nation states now, right? The nation states have invested tons and tons and tons of money into compromising organizations because that's how they're funding the wars these days, right? The ransom attacks where they're asking you to transfer bitcoins and things like that is what going towards funding these wars that we are seeing around the world. The thing with nation states is they have immeasurable patience, and then they have unlimited resources. So for you to combat against them, you can only do it with robust defense in depth, right? Having your configurations correctly managed. The trend at this point is try and keep things simple. Try and use what you already own, configure it correctly, so that lack of configuration doesn't become that gaping hole in your organization.
Right. Thanks for sharing those insights with us. As we wrap up our discussion, Amol, what final piece of advice would you offer to our listeners about maintaining cybersecurity in their businesses?
Yeah, what I would say definitely is, start with the basics. And that's why, this whole concept of crucial config had emerged, is basically using your technology that you're already paying for. So robust identity management, creating and making sure that configurations are properly set up so there's no holes, educating your employees, having your endpoints properly managed and updated. And if you kind of follow the basics of cybersecurity, it doesn't have to be. If someone's sticking you with a massive bill, and giving you a point solution saying, oh, this is the next best thing in cybersecurity, sign up for this, you're probably going down the wrong path. That's truly what my belief is, right? I know that people may not agree with it, but really someone shouldn't be sticking you, a small business, with a massive bill and say, oh, it's going to cost you $50,000 to do this, right? It should really be simpler than that. It really is simpler than that. We make it way too complicated than it needs to be.
Amol, thank you once again for joining us today and sharing such invaluable insights into cybersecurity for a small business owner. It was a great pleasure hosting you today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. We would like to extend a special thank to our partners who make this podcast possible. RBC, UPS, Zero, and Constant Contact for their unwavering support. Don't forget to subscribe to the Canadian SME Small Business Magazine at CanadianSME.ca to stay updated on the latest trends and insights that can drive your business success.